Hi, my name is Kelly Brown, and I'm going to provide you with an overview of FEMA's Public Assistance Grant Program. The mission of the Public Assistance Program is to provide assistance to state, tribal, and local governments and certain types of private nonprofit organizations so that communities can quickly respond to and recover from major disasters or emergencies declared by the President. FEMA has 3 primary performance goals to evaluate the effectiveness, efficiency, and customer satisfaction. They've established several benchmarks for each goal, as you can see here on this slide. I think it's important to note the length of time allotted for disasters that have a significant economic impact. This may be part of the reason that gaps between the bureaucratic and emergent norms frequently occur, since impacted citizens may expect a quicker obligation and distribution of the funds than what is currently established here on these slides. There is a cost-sharing requirement for this program. As you can see, FEMA will cover at least 75% of the funds needed to respond to the disaster or emergency, while the grantee is responsible for the remaining costs, up to 25% of the total. The grantee's costs can be shared among multiple sub-grantees, however. There are 4 tiers of eligibility presented here in a pyramid because each of the criteria builds upon the previous eligibility category. This means that eligibility begins with the applicant and moves up the pyramid. Eligible applicants include state governments, local governments and special districts, private nonprofits, federally recognized Indian or tribal governments and organizations. And then eligible facilities are the responsibility of eligible applicants. They're located in a designated disaster area. They're not under the authority of another federal agency, and they have to be in active use at the time of the disaster. This means that there cannot be double dipping between multiple federal agencies, and that a building cannot be vacant or dormant prior to the disaster. Eligible work is required as a result of the disaster. It has to be located within the designated disaster area. It must be the legal responsibility of the eligible applicant, and it cannot be the result of negligence or improper upkeep of a facility. Finally, all eligible costs must be reasonable and necessary. They must be compliant with procurement requirements of all levels of government, and they must be reduced by all applicable credits, meaning insurance credits or any other credits that may be applied. And they also must be fair and equitable. Funds can be used for emergency work or permanent work, and they include debris removal, emergency protective measures, which can be before, during, or after a storm, and then permanent work, which is the repair of roads and bridges, water control facilities, buildings and equipment, utilities, parks, recreational facilities, and other facilities that don't fit within the categories listed here. I'm going to provide you with a brief overview of the grant program life cycle. This begins with the disaster or emergency event, which triggers the preliminary damage assessment. The preliminary damage assessment is very important because it guides the funding determination. The PDA is conducted by joint state and FEMA teams and assesses the magnitude and scope of the disaster, the need for supplemental assistance, and any immediate funding needs. The next step in the process is the presidential declaration of an emergency or disaster event. This allows FEMA to designate eligible areas for assistance. After this step, the grantee or the state will hold the applicant's briefing to discuss applicant eligibility criteria, assistance that's available, and record-keeping and documentation requirements. At the meeting, or within 30 days after the designation by FEMA, the applicant must submit their request for public assistance. At the kickoff meeting will follow the request submission, and the Public Assistance Coordinator, or the PAC, will guide the applicant through the process to receive funding and maintain the applicant's case management file. During the project formulation and cost estimating stage, damages to the facilities are documented to identify the scope of work and estimated costs of that work. The applicant will then submit project worksheets for review and validation by the Public Assistance Coordinator. Once they are reviewed for completeness, they are forwarded for approval and funding. Following approval, FEMA obligates the funds and the grantee is required to notify subgrantees and distribute all funds in a timely manner. Large, ongoing projects will be reimbursed following the submission of documentation of the actual costs to FEMA. Finally, the appeals and closeout stage ensures that all work has been completed, all appeals for determination and/or cost adjustment have been resolved, and all eligible costs have been reimbursed. I wanted to provide you with some brief historical data on the use of program funds. Here you can see that the largest funding category for the major disasters are for repairs of public buildings, emergency protective measures, and debris removal. The categories for emergencies follow a similar pattern, although you can see that the most significant amount of funding is spent on emergency protective measures. While private nonprofits are eligible for assistance, you can see here that governmental applicants make up the majority of the applicant pool. The other 10 and 13% for major disasters and emergencies are the private nonprofits. This concludes my presentation. For more information and additional questions, you may visit the FEMA website, which is listed on this slide. I hope you have found this information useful. I appreciate it. Thank you.